Hi, I'm Ole from confide.com. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 different types of EQs that you can find inside of Logic Pro, free as they come with Logic Pro. They're the stock EQs. It's important to get a grasp on what's already there before you run along and buy Pro Q3 and other great paid equalizers.
So the first EQ I'm going to show you is the channel EQ, the linear EQ, and the single EQ. These are basically the same. However, the first two are very alike. Here we have the channel EQ. This is the standard go-to EQ in Logic Pro. The difference between the channel EQ and the linear EQ is that the linear EQ is more directed towards mixing and mastering, whilst the channel EQ is more directed towards a workhorse EQ. The channel EQ uses a consistent CPU load, which means that it doesn't require a lot of CPU. You can use all bands and the CPU load will be more or less the same. Whilst in the linear phase EQ, the more bands you add, the more CPU load you will get. And the advantage of the linear phase EQ is that in mastering, for example, you can apply quite steep filters without phase issues occurring, which is when some sounds or some frequencies are canceled out because they clash with each other. For example, in a multi-mic drum kit or in different guitars that live in the same frequency area might get canceled out a bit because of the frequency cancellations. Those are the phase issues that might occur when you do drastic EQ cuts and boosts. And let me show you. For instance, when you add 10 decibels with a sharp Q, that's one typical way of getting phase problems. Or if you add a steep filter such as 24 or a 36 or even a 48 decibels per octave, those can cause problems down the line with frequencies canceling out and unexpected problems in your sound or in your mix. The linear phase EQ avoids these problems whilst the channel EQ doesn't. However, in the regular EQ work, which is almost always careful, conservative cuts and boosts, you don't need to worry about that at all. So they're basically the same and they can be used between each other. Let's see, linear EQ, boom. And then you have the same setting. They live in the same realm, as you can say. And then you have the single EQ, which is a very easy to use EQ. If you just need to do one specific thing, you can go to the single EQ. It does low cuts, or it does the low shelf, the parametric, which is the node in a certain frequency. It does a high shelf and it does a high cut. The advantage with this one is that it's very simple. It has no frequency analyzer, so you really have to use your ears. So I strongly recommend you to use this one as often as possible. It's great for learning to be a better mixer, to be better at listening. This is a gold mine. That's it for the channel EQ, the linear phase EQ, and the single EQ. Next up, we have the vintage EQ collection. Let's look them up. First off, we have the console EQ. Looks like this one. Now, this is a typical Neve style EQ. It has a high shelf, a low shelf. It has one parametric EQ. This one takes care of the mid-range. And then we have a low cut, but there's no high cut. I think the idea is that when you turn up the drive, you can hear that the top of the signal, the top of the frequency spectrum is being attenuated because of the harmonic distortion. So that's the console EQ, or the Neve EQ, as I can say. And then we have the graphic EQ, which is mainly based on the API. I think it looks like an API 560. It's a graphic EQ, which has set bands that you can boost or cut. And you can add some drive and you can choose how the distortion is going off. And if you want linear phase, this is better for mastering, where you can avoid some phase issues. Whilst the natural might introduce some phase issues, but some of those issues might be preferable in the setting of using this EQ, because this is a very musical EQ. And finally, we have in the vintage EQ collection of Logic Pro, we have the tube EQ, and this is a classic one. This is sort of an emulation of the classic Pultec EQ. It has the low boost and low attenuation, which is the classic Pultec trick where you boost a bit in the low end and then you cut a bit. Now this is a low shelf, while this is a low cut, and then you can choose the frequency and this is not, these are not set, which is in the original Pultec, and these are variable, so it's even more flexibility. And then you have the mid-range EQ, also the Pultec emulation, and also here you have different distortion algorithms and also linear phase if you want. And again, the CPU load is greater with the linear phase. And finally, the third type of EQ that you can find is the match EQ, and I have an example for you here. I have a vocal which I almost haven't treated. This is one rapper's verse. Sounds like this.
Ingen kan redde dere nå, det alt for sent.
No treatment at all, only a transient shaper because there were some sharp P's and T's there. But if you look at this one, this is fully treated.
Scroller på noen socials, åpner hele kåken.
Norwegian rap, that is, the beautiful language of the north. Right, so what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to show you exactly how you can use the match EQ. It can be a great time saver if you want to get some EQing done in a blast. On the untreated track, you insert a match EQ, and what you do is simply drag the bad sounding audio file or audio region to the current here. Boom. Then it analyzes it and get an EQ shape of the bad sounding source. And then you go to the good sounding source, which is this one, which has treatment on it. And we'll drag it to the reference. Boom. And then we will go to the EQ curve and we will hit match. And there we go. Let's listen.
Bare vent, hva har du tenkt? At du skal prøve på det her, har du trent? Blir aldri kjent, blir bare brent. Ingen kan redde dere nå, det alt for sent. Som om de gikk I fjellet, falt I fransk.
That's it. And you can also cut and boost the treatment. As you can see, there's a bit of a low end that is taken away. There's some high end taken away. There's some boosts at 200 hertz and at 500 hertz. And you can always adjust to taste. If you think that this was a bit extreme, okay, we'll pull that down a bit, and then you can hear for yourself. You can just press your mouse and then go there and adjust yourself to taste. Let's listen. It can get you results quick, but you have to use it with a bit of critical sense. Be a bit skeptical to the result you get, because there's a lot more to EQing than just tweaking the shapes. You often need to use EQ in several turns, before and after compressors and what have you, and saturators. And you know, when you're treating a vocal, especially in music, you need to do a lot of steps, and many videos will come where I show you exactly how you treat, for example, a rap vocal, but also other types of vocals. So, for example, podcast vocals, how you treat those. There are differences. So that's it for the match EQ, and we're done.
I want to ask you a question. Which one of these EQs do you think is the best? Have you tried them? Was it the linear phase EQ, the channel EQ? Maybe it was the analog emulations, or maybe the match EQ? Leave a comment below and let's chat. Finally, if you like videos like these, hit the subscribe button and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace!